Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Inside the Pigskin. And boy, we're going to be all over the map, pro and college. Going to talk about the Tom Brady, the Dolphins, the Detroit Lions, got some college football. And yes, what would the show be without Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams? We're going to get all that there. First, let me bring on am I considered the dream team? Steve Ballesteri, welcome back to the big show.
Thank you. I'm in the secret square here tonight, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, don't worry. You're going to write the forward for my next book too, so be ready for that. When I get it out, when I work on it, either later this year, beginning of next year, for sure. And Bo, well, you'll be in the next book when I write it. I'm glad to have you back.
Yep. Always fun to be here, guys.
And Coach, Barry Manilow had a song, This One's for You. And you know what, Coach? This shirt is for you because I know how much you love Florida State University.
Did they win or something? Did they win again?
No, they didn't. But, I won't hold out hope for them this week either. And I'll get to that in a little bit. Well, actually, and Melfar Jr.
What's going on, fellas?
All right. Well, you know what, Coach? Just to set the record straight on that early, Florida State is 1-5. They're 14th in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and they go over and they play the Duke Blue Devils, who are 5-1, 9th in the ACC. And Manny Diaz, the former Miami Hurricanes coach, is coaching Duke, and Manny's known for being Mr. Turnover Chain. Now, I got to tell you a quick story before we get to the other topics. The Hurricanes PR guy, said nobody's allowed to talk about the turnover chain when it comes to Mario Cristobal. I never did, but I'll never forget the time when he sent me a message. Are you talking about the turnover chain? If I had gone out there and answered him, it would have killed my video. So I kept it going. I didn't answer him. I came up with the questions which were not the turnover chain. I said, just because I asked a player doesn't mean I don't know what the heck you're telling us not to do. And I talked to the player, but not the coach, and there was no such thing. But, I understand I'm getting nervous, but Mr. Turnover Chain. And now, meanwhile, Manny Diaz takes his turnover chain, and he goes against Florida State. That's a little part of that story. I was going to wait till later, but it justifies my shirt with Coach Bono. But I'll have another shirt ready for the Miami-Florida State game, which will be next week. Stay tuned to see that particular shirt. All right, well, we've had a busy day here in the National Football League. The NFL approved Tom Brady purchase of 10% of the Las Vegas Raiders, a deal 2 years in the making. He also bought interest in the WNBA's Las Vegas Aces. Tom said he plans to be active with the Raiders. He has a close relationship with owner Mark Davis. What can you expect from the Fox color analysts? And the reason why I'm going to tell you right now, though, I believe Tom Brady owns 5%, and then his other partner owns 5%. But nevertheless, him and his partner own 10%. Steve, what are your thoughts since you know Tom Brady more than anybody else? Hello, Daniel.
Well, I think, this was something he's been planning on for quite some time, right? So I don't know how active he could be with the Raiders, owning just a small part of it, but we'll see. But I saw where the NFL put all kinds of restrictions on him in regards to his Fox NFL career. I don't see how he'll be able to do his job on Fox now because, he can't even criticize an official's call, So I think one or the other is going to end up having to go.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how this plays out over time. What do you think, Bo?
Yeah, it's the restrictions that I find really interesting. Now, the gambling ones, stuff like that, of course, right? Like your part owner makes total sense. Not being able to effectively do your commentator job because of some of the restrictions is wild to me. Now, I get it a little bit as far as like directly going after an official directly, but not being able to talk about bad officiating, I feel like that's going to eliminate half of his job because if we've watched any games this year, the officiating is horrible. So what's he going to do on screen? He's be like, oh, I can't talk about that. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I kind of wondered about that too. And I will actually have a chance to see how it plays out now that he's actually a part owner. What we saw over the first few weeks was a steady dose of Dallas Cowboy games, but we'll get to that storyline in a minute. What do you think, Coach? Can this guy multitask? Will he be able to multitask based on what's in front of him?
Well, I would like to know before I could answer that is like how involved will he be with the Raiders? If he wants to be involved, and then how much, what does that look like exactly? If it's, if he's Jerry Jones in it, then he's not gonna maybe even want to do the media stuff, But look, this is one of the most successful players in NFL history. Okay. And what this highlights really is the vast gap that there still is between ownership and labor. Okay. The vast amount of wealth that Tom Brady has accumulated over his career, right? He's buying 10% of the Raiders, so he's a minority owner. He doesn't own a significant, not that doesn't 10% doesn't come with like decision-making ability, right? That's the one thing that jumped out at me. The other thing was like, all right, I wasn't aware of all the stipulations and all of that stuff, but man, it's a great investment. It's a better investment than gold, because these franchises keep, and that's why they keep them under lock and key, and not everybody can invest in it, because however long he wants to own 10% of the Raiders, all right, he's going to make a lot more money cashing out than any stock that he can buy or anything like that, because these teams are gaining value by the second. And I mean, it's great for him. I think it's awesome. It's a great storyline. But at the end of the day, what does it look like? What does his involvement really look like?
All right, we got a very good friend of ours, a friend of the show in the chat room. Look at Steve and look at Mel. They're familiar with Jennifer Matthews. Hi, guys. Hey, Jen. She's back on Inside the Pigskin.
Jennifer, how's it going?
We got a great crew here tonight here for you, Jennifer. She remembers these guys. Coach, this is Jennifer. One of these days you get a chance to meet her. She wants to come on. Bo, you also like her too. She works with Candy on Chicks and Salsa. They're partners together. So for those of you that are familiar with Chicks and Salsa, you got Jennifer Matthew Lewis, Candy Eveling, you got Megan Price, and you also have Kerry Johnson as well. All right, Mel, you got the last word on Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, like Coach was saying, I think it's a great investment. I mean, the return on your investment is tremendous. You look at the value of these franchises right now. You look at what Jerry Jones paid for his franchise back when he bought it back in 1989 or 88 or whenever it was, and he put up everything he had. I think it was $100 million or something at that time, and now the valuation on the franchise is $10 billion. So it's a great return on your investment. And he's, one of the great marketers, one of the greatest marketers that there is. The Dallas Cowboys, whether they're good, whether they're bad, people are talking about them. They haven't been relevant. They haven't done anything since the mid-90s. But people talk about them religiously every single day, and it's because of Jerry Jones. I mean, he's a mastermind. I mean, he's a great marketer. I remember, when they first started doing these valuations for franchises, NFL teams were nowhere near, on the radar as far as valuations are concerned. Those Major League Soccer teams, they were all extremely valuable back originally. And I specifically remember Roger Goodell not calling them football teams anymore and started referring to them as clubs. And once they started referring to them as clubs, it took on a whole different mindset within the NFL as far as, hey, we need to make these franchises more valuable. We need to increase the value of our product. And these things have just skyrocketed. So, I mean, it's great for a guy like Tom Brady. I understand Richard Seymour he got approved on a little minority stake in the Raiders as well. I think it's great that, former players are getting an opportunity to have some ownership, and who knows what that could parlay into. Michael Jordan took a small piece of the Charlotte Bobcats, and he ended up being able to buy the entire franchise. Charlotte Hornets. I'm sorry, I think they were Bobcats when he first got involved.
Okay, I know where you're going with
But
that.
I think it's great. The NFL players are finally getting an opportunity. The guys who were very successful, and if that's what they want to do, how involved will he be with that? With the stipulations that I was reading as far as what he can and cannot do, is really going to hamper his job that he has right now. I don't know how he can be really effective by not having the opportunity to go into the production meetings. I don't understand how he can be productive and really add any value to the telecast without having a conversation about what's going on with the team, not being able to do that. So I think he's kind of behind the 8 ball in that aspect. Yeah, he can get out there and ramble about what we see, but there's always the stories behind the story that we need to get involved in. There's always the storylines, and he's not going to be able to get involved really in the storylines on the television broadcast.
Well, here's how he does become relevant. Okay, you ready? Number one, he's got Kevin Burkhardt, one of the best broadcasters in the business. Number two, he's got Aaron Andrews roaming the sidelines and Tom Rinaldi. If you got a supporting cast like that, you're going to be relevant. Number three, okay, here's a got wherefore, whatever the heck it is, okay? This guy here gets $375 million. Is that what he's getting over at Fox? That's not a bad job if you can get it. $37.5 million a year just to go out there and talk about the game. So if he doesn't have the supporting cast on the air, the job becomes more difficult. But Fox knew what they were doing. Surround him with the most experienced team that he can, and all they're going to want him to do is talk about his Super Bowl rings and what it took. And I'll tell you, there's another person more credible about winning than this guy, Tom Brady. There really isn't. All he did was win 7-6 in New England and managed. If that wasn't good enough, we'll have one in Tampa too. Doesn't matter. And no, I'm not talking about the Tampa 2. I'm kidding with you. That's what happens when you go ballistically.
But he had to follow me down to South Florida, so
What's that?
He had to follow me down to South Florida, when I left New England. So there was, it was in the cards, man.
Yeah. By the way, now that you brought it up, how many times did you talk to Tom Brady anyways?
Well, all the time at practice, they'd have the big scrum around him after practice, after the games, whatever,
Well, was he pretty cordial to you?
He was cordial to everybody.
Really?
Yeah. He was always very polite, except for that last preseason in New England. That's when everything fell apart with the contract. And he was very curt with everyone. You could tell he was steaming. So,
all right, but for the most part, you had pretty good dealings with him. Is that correct?
Oh, I never had any problems with Tom. When I was able to be around him or whatever, yeah, he was a great guy.
Great stuff. Well, yeah, he'll find a way. You can put all the restrictions you can have on him, but you can't take away his Super Bowl rings. You can't take away his experience. I mean, that's. I think if you're a guy like Brady, you can live off of that. I wouldn't say call it wing it, but at least he has a lot more in his pocket than most guys would with those types of restrictions. That's for sure. And I think
his work ethic is out of this universe. So he'll find a way to work through it, I'm sure. But I mean, it definitely puts a cramp on it.
I'm sure. Pretty interesting. So, all right, you know what? Let's stay on the Raiders theme while we have a chance, because they are trading Devontae Adams to the New York Jets, according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. The Raiders will reportedly receive a third-round pick that becomes a second-rounder based on performance. Adams is reuniting with Aaron Rodgers. So let's talk about Rodgers for a moment, okay? If Rodgers wasn't under enough pressure now, don't you think it makes it a whole lot worse, Steve?
With Rodgers, I mean, nothing surprises me, right? I mean, everything's always about Aaron and what Aaron wants. And, and he's not a really good team guy. You saw that last night. I mean, that final interception, if you watch the tape again, there's still 2 minutes to go in the game. And Breece Hall was wide open with nobody around him underneath, but he wanted to go for the big play, and it got picked off. and he threw Mike Williams right under the bus. So, and I just don't think he, in spurts, he's still Aaron Rodgers. But if you look at the overall product that he's put out, he's not the same player he used to be.
What do you think, Bo?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's exactly the same guy he used to be. He threw that guy under the bus immediately.
I meant on the field, but yeah, I get
it's
what
never my fault.
No,
I mean, he's saying that he was running the wrong route and in the wrong spot, but then he saw him and adjusted his throw. Well, if that's the case, then it shouldn't have been 5 yards short anyway, right? So, I mean, if you're taking everything he said at face value, you should have still been able to hit his guy. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Now he's going to have another receiver, so maybe that works out. We'll see who else he can try and get fired. I don't know. It's a dumpster fire. It's fun to watch.
Well, how long has it been since they've been in the playoffs? 2010, right? Should be, I think, 14 years. Yeah, it's a long time. I can see why the Jets are a team that, they don't want. Nobody wants to play for him anyways. I don't feel bad for Mike Greenberg of ESPN. Don't worry, you get paid a lot to be a Jets fan. Why don't you see if you can go deeper than a team that hasn't been in the Super Bowl since Joe Namath took you there? But that's just me, okay? I mean, from a blue collar Jew in South Florida to a Meshuggah, is that what they call it? How do you know what this Jewish terminology is up in New York? Get out of here, Greenberg. Really? Seriously? Maybe he'll be my newest person to hate after Howard Cosell, for those people that are following me. All right, I'll turn over to Coach before I completely go insane over this topic. All right, Coach, what do you think?
Well,
let's face reality. Well, let's face reality. You got Devontae Adams. You have no excuses. Go ahead, Coach.
Look, I look at it from this standpoint. Like, first thing I thought of is like, poor Robert Saleh is probably going, oh, now you're getting going to get the guy, right? And look, I look at it as, look, they're going all in. There's chemistry. Those two have a history together. They're on the same page. They've been in the same system. I think they're going to have their receiving core which isn't bad, right? It's not bad. It just improved exponentially, right? So, I think they got to be. If you're a Jet fan, you got to be excited about this. Now they got to produce, but they're not that far off, right? Their defense is playing well. They're number 2 in total defense in the NFL. So that to me is the stat that matters. Turnover margin, I think they're 18th. That's where they've been sloppy, right? They just haven't. And then penalties, Jesus, the other night, was an example of it. They're 30th in penalties. So, they have to clean those things up in their game. The defense is good enough to win with. If they could just not commit, cut their penalties in half and just take care of the damn football, they can make a run for it. Like, look, who's better in that division than the Bills?
Right now, I don't think there is anybody.
I mean, right? So they just went toe to toe with the Bills, in a game. Honestly, look, I love Greg Zuerlein. If he makes one of those field goals that he misses, I mean, the games are so close, and a player makes a difference. One player makes a big difference. The very first NFL team that I ever got to go and visit as a coach, I was at the University of Maine, and Chuck Bresnan was on our staff and set it up where I could go visit visit the Bills. So I go visit the Bills in the off season, and I was waiting for Bruce DeHaven to come in because Bruce was, we lost Bruce, but Bruce was always really good to me. And I went there to clinic with him on special teams, and Bill Polian and John Butler were in the building. They were getting ready for the draft. They knew I was coming. I mean, it's like a Saturday, no one's around. They pull me in, and we're sitting in the staff meeting room, and they're watching combine tape, and Mel will remember this name, but they were watching tape on Pat Swilling, remember the linebacker, from Georgia Tech, right?
I know all about Pat Swilling. Don't get me
So
started there.
here's where I'm going with this, and I apologize to everybody if I'm dragging this out.
No, you're doing great. I got a Pat Swilling story after you're done.
Bill Polian said this, and this was like, was it 1989? Or no, yeah, probably 89, 90, right around that. He said, Coach, the difference between the top team in the league and the bottom team in the league is probably 3 to 5 players. 3 to 5 players, and one of them is going to be at the quarterback position, right? But when you think about that, right, they're getting a big time player. This guy's, he's a big time player, and what he's going to add to that offense, I think if you beat the Jets already, you're glad that you got them early, potentially. Now, the rest of it's a dumpster fire. Who knows what the fuck's going to happen? Who knows what the heck's going to happen? I've never done that in a year and a half.
It's always the first time, Coach. I'm telling you.
Everyone's entitled to one.
Yeah.
So here, before I turn it over to Mel, all right, Coach, you really got me going here. So that's okay, Coach. You're supposed to get this quarterback going once a night, because no show would be good for me unless I have 2 reallys and 2 seriously's on them. And don't worry, I'm not staging this really and seriously stuff. It's a whole lot better than the expletives that are out there. Okay. So here's the thing. Okay. You talked about Pat Swilling, right? Is that what you talked about? Well, let me tell you something, my coach. I was covering the Lions during the draft when Wayne Fox was the coach over there. And you know what? When the Lions made that trade to New Orleans, we got our pass rusher. The guy has a big cigar, bigger than an elephant has a whatever you call it. Is that a trunk that they call? I don't even know. Something like that. I'm not familiar with the animals.
I didn't know where you were going with that one.
Yeah, right?
Oh, no. I'm doing good. No. So he's got a cigar bigger than a trunk. I'm serious. So get this, okay? And you know what? Pat Swilling had 2 or 3 productive years with the Lions. But you know who the Saints got in that draft? Willie Roaf. And where did he go? To the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Seriously? Really? That's what you have. You have a trade that they got my intimidating pass rusher. And guess what? The draft choice we have is going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. My goodness. I'm not dumb enough to make this up because I lived it. I'm telling you. See, Steve ought to know, like I do, okay, that when you're covering a team, whether it's during the draft, whether it's during the season or whatever, these stories are what they are. And you never know when you need them in your pocket, so you can talk about them now. But thanks for bringing Pat Swilling up, Coach. I love you, brother. Really, that's enough. And again, I wore this shirt just for you, but I'll even it up next week. All right. Now that I got that out of my system, by the way, Chris Lentz, appreciate you being on the show. Yeah, Mari Cooper went to the Bills.
Yeah, it was a busy day.
Yeah, it really was a busy day. So Josh, help me with the Josh Allen, I guess. This guy here has another top-rate target, and Akers go back to the Vikings. I believe that's his second stint with the Vikings. But nevertheless, he's being reunited with Kevin O'Connell. They know him, so I think they're both good trades as well. Hello, Ralph Williams. All right. Well, I'll get that out of the way. It's off to Mel Farr and see if you can make any sense about this whole Aaron Rodgers drama. Now, I will say one thing. If Aaron Rodgers is not done yet, I would advise him to go after Mason Crosby to get rid of Greg Zuerlein because he's got every other player he wants. And this one might be a bit cheaper.
I mean, Zuerlein's not bad. They had swirling wind. Both kickers missed.
Yeah,
I mean,
the wind was bad there.
Point.
Yeah, but Mason Crosby kicked. Hold it, Paul. Mason Crosby kicked in Green Bay. I mean, that was a tough place. They call it the frozen tundra. No, it's not like you have Tony Franklin, who's wearing didn't Tony Franklin many years ago wear a barefoot and kick footballs, if I remember correctly?
Yeah,
right?
he kicked for New England.
Anybody's done that.
Yeah, well, no.
In New England, he'd wear there was like a snowmobile boot that he'd slide on, and he'd keep his foot warm, and then he'd take it off and he'd run out on the frozen field and kick the football. I mean,
See, I remember that just because I have a few memory issues here and there. Like my wife will tell you, he doesn't forget certain things, just most of them. No, not most of them, but that's
just the important stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks,
That's
Steve.
right.
You're my agent. All right, now off to Mel. Let's see if you can make some sense out of all this.
Yeah, so and I'm like Coach. I mean, I feel real bad for Coach Saleh. If they were going to do all these things, why not give him the opportunity? Give him every chance to succeed. Let him have an opportunity to switch up the offensive coordinator to somebody that he can, that he wants. Although the guy they end up hiring, I mean, he didn't have a say in the offensive coordinator when he hired Hackett. But why not, if he wanted to make the change, why not wait another week or wait another 2 weeks and see what happens? I think that we saw the best that the Jets had to offer. They're playing on a lot of emotion yesterday. I think the trade, is going to be great for him probably. Offensively, it'd be great for Aaron because then now he has somebody he can boo up with in the locker room, because I really think the locker room, I think the culture is messed up there. I think Aaron Rodgers feels like he's here and then everybody else is down there. You look at him, he doesn't interact with anybody in the sidelines. Nobody comes and says anything to him. It's like, man, stay away from Aaron. It's off limits. So I think they really have a culture and a chemistry problem there that they have to overcome as well. And I don't think he has a real respect for the coaches. He doesn't seem to really like the guys that he's playing with. The guys drop balls. You see that he's visibly frustrated when they drop a ball. It's like, man, I threw the ball to you, man. Catch the ball. I don't, never in the history of the NFL has an interim coach taken a team to the playoffs. I don't think it's going to be this year. As much as, you may like the interim guy, as much talent as they may have, there's more problems than the head coach. They're very disjointed. They're very dysfunctional. And I think they really have a culture problem in the locker room as well. And eventually you're going to see guys are just going to be playing for themselves and they're not playing for one another. And you kind of see that right now. So I don't think, I think it's, it may help Devontae feel better, but it's not going to get him a Super Bowl ring. He may catch some balls. He may have some good numbers. He may go to the Pro Bowl, but it's not going to help them get to the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
All right, let me tell you, Mel, I am so glad you brought up Robert Saleh. First of all, Bill Belichick said they made a mistake letting the guy go. I do agree with Belichick in that sense. Why didn't Robert Saleh have an equal opportunity to coach, to get Adams? You were talking about it way back then. You only delayed it a couple weeks because, number one, you're trying to drive the price down because of a hamstring problem until he knew he wanted to get the heck out of there anyway. So, Mel, you get an A for that observation because you were right. Saleh didn't have. So let me ask you guys a question. How many cards are in a deck of cards?
52.
Steve?
Is it a full deck?
54
deck.
2 jokers, isn't it?
Yeah, here, let's go across. I have my reasons for bringing this up.
54 with the jokers.
I mean,
Never mind.
you
He
have to
got
have
it
those
right.
cards.
Never
So I
mind. He
just-
got it right.
54
I
with 2
couldn't even
jokers.
get it past balance there. Seriously, never mind. Let's keep moving on. All it took was one person.
Gotta get up a little earlier.
A little quicker. Oh, I love you, Bill.
You ain't getting
I'll tell you. All right, so let's go on. We got more NFL stuff. Bo's on it here with us until 9 Eastern time. We're going to get the NFL hay on here. We're going to also go to a station break in a moment with Candy Ebling. But
So before we go on from there, if you're Adams, you have to really hope that Rodgers doesn't get hurt, right? Because this could ultimately be a second stop where things get weird. Because if he gets banged up and then decides to hang it up at the end of the year, man, you're playing musical chairs without a chair yet again.
Yeah.
Well, his
that-
contract, I mean, he's owed $36 million
I meant
next year.
I meant to say that too. The other thing is one of the other pressing issues with them is they got to figure out how to protect him, because he's getting hit way too much.
Yeah, I mean that's these guys haven't played long enough together, so they don't have that chemistry with one another. You got a kind of hodgepodge line. You kind of patch them together, and that takes time. That's repetition. Him not going to training camp doesn't help because he doesn't get those reps in there to get a feel for how these guys are going to work together. I can't remember if he missed him not going to mini camp. I don't remember if he missed any training camp, but again, not getting any live reps in training camp doesn't help either. You need need those live reps so they can develop that continuity. I mean, there's only so much you can do in those joint practices. I mean, really, let's be honest. So I mean, you need to be under the fire, and that's very true. So that's not going to necessarily get better by the end of the year. So there's a lot of issues, like I said, other than wide receiver.
Well, I'll end the topic on this stat. I think we talked about it before our show began. Number one, Zach Wilson's 3-3, and Aaron Rodgers 2-4, and then they scored the same amount of points. So everybody that wants to look at Zach Wilson and paid him like a big villain, I think a little bit.
So Zach Wilson was bad.
Huh?
Zach Wilson was bad. I mean, Aaron Rodgers' ceiling is much higher than Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just looking at numbers for numbers. I get it. I mean, everybody. I'm just looking at numbers for numbers. Whether one's bad.
I don't know where they stand now after 6 games.
Yards.
But after 5 games last year with Wilson, they had scored 93 points, and after 5 games this year with Rodgers, they scored 93 points. So the offense hasn't been. They haven't been putting points on the board, and they do have a very good defense. Right. They should be better than 2-4.
I mean, one quarterback.
They're 22nd in the league in points per game.
Yeah, I mean, one quarterback's 2-4, the other one's 3-3. I'll leave it at that because none of it makes any sense in the first place when you talk about the New York Jets. All right, one more NFL topic before we go out there and turn over to Candy. I want to get all the NFL topics on here before Bo has to take off, and I've got 2 more I want to hit. All right, the Miami Dolphins are 1-9 without Tua in the last 10 games, and they stand 2-3 in the AFC East coming off a bye week. Does interim starter Tyler Huntley have any wins to hold down the fort until Tua comes back? All right, see, well, we don't have to go too detailed on that one, but what do you think?
When it comes to Huntley, I mean, he's a very experienced quarterback. He's been around. The thing with me is, they brought him in, cold, and he's been kind of learning the offense, as games play out. Now, the bye couldn't have came at a better week for him.
Right.
Because it gives him more time to learn the playbook. And, again, they have the supporting cast, around him. But, they just haven't put it together either this year. I mean, with the people they have, their skill position guys, they should be playing better than they really are. Now, a big chunk of that comes with the quarterback, obviously. But, I never considered Tua that high up in the hierarchy where everything would fall apart as it did without him. Right. So I think the bye week came at a great time for Huntley. And, I'll be really interested to see how that plays out this coming week.
All right. What do you think, Bo?
Yeah, I mean, I expected to see more out of Huntley than we have. So the bye week was definitely helpful. We watched him perform well with the Ravens when he was there and Lamar got hurt, right? So we were thinking that he was going to be able to do something, maybe not great the first week out, but you thought he was going to be able to be productive in some way. And they really seemed to not let him try and push the field at all. He only had 2 deep throws, and then, he didn't connect on either, but then they got away from it altogether. So everything from there was to the flat, shallow crosses. And I mean, you have all that speed. It doesn't really make any sense to hobble those guys. So hopefully they open the playbook up for him a little bit. Again, we saw him perform admirably with the Ravens. I figure he should be able to do something with this team. That being said, they don't play defense, so he's going to have to play better than he ever has.
Okay, fair enough. What do you think, Coach?
I mean, look, it's hard when you have to play your backup quarterback. I don't care who it is. It's hard. It just, it's hard on the staff. What can this guy do? You have to be smart about, the situations you put him in too. I really haven't watched the Dolphins. And so, I can't really comment how they're using him, but it's not, it's the defense has to end up playing better. Special team. Everybody's got to play better if you expect to win. I mean, I've been through those. It's like, when you lose your starter, it's tough sledding until you get them back.
All right, Mel.
Yeah, I think everybody's fooling themselves. The Dolphins went and got somebody off of somebody's practice squad. So I mean, it's like picking somebody at the bagger at Publix and say, "Hey, come on, let's start for my football team." I mean, the guy's thrown 8. He's thrown 8 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions. I think he's got about thrown for about 2,000 yards. He is what he is. I mean, let's be honest. And like Coach says, and because they've got so much money allocated to that position in one person, very difficult for them to get a quality backup. Now, they had guys in all camp with him, 3 or 4 arms in there. And I think, who was the guy? Mike White, I think they have there was the backup.
They had Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle.
Okay, there we go. The Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle. But those guys aren't good enough that you had to get somebody from Publix, the bagger at Publix, to come be your starting quarterback. I don't understand that. You've seen these guys all season long. You've seen them all mini camp. You've seen them during camp, and yet they're not. And the styles are different. The way that he plays is a lot different than what Tua plays. He's a guy that's going to utilize his legs because he doesn't really see the field that well. Because he's athletic. He's a mobile quarterback.
I've run him at least 15 times a game.
Yeah, I mean, it's much different than Tua. So you got to change the whole offense up for this guy here. So your wide receivers, Waddle and the Cheetah, they're not getting any looks because this guy really can't see unless they just design something where the guy, one of those guys is going to be wide open and they say, hey, look, Tyreek, you run a 9. Hey, Tyler, throw it as far as you can. Just rear back and throw that thing as far as you can and as high as you can and let him run underneath it and let's see what happens. Other than that, it's not going to be pretty. I mean, let's be honest, because they've allocated so much money to one person in that position that is, they were hoping, banking that Tua was going to stay healthy, and it didn't happen. So they're in a bad position, very bad.
Yeah, it's funny how you say that, Mel. Thanks a lot for bringing that point up because you and I and Coach and Bo, for the most part, I think we've all been drinking the Kool-Aid. Well, Tua got paid, but will he be able to play another full season back to back? Well, that answer was already given to us, and I think they still should have waited another year to pay the guy, but they wanted to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, and sign their quarterbacks is what they wanted to do. But okay, go ahead, Bo.
The thing I just was the head scratcher when they signed him is I get it. He had a fantastic last season, but based on his injury history through not just the NFL but through college,
right?
How you didn't have a backup plan is wild to me. Like you're going into this with Skylar Thompson, which, we haven't seen anything special out of. You know what Tim Boyle is. We've seen him around. Nothing great there. So the fact that you didn't have a plan as a backup for a guy that has had one healthy season the entire time he's played football is crazy. Like it seems incredibly short-sighted.
Well, I truly believe the man to blame there is Chris Greer, the general manager. Really, you got one guy, that's lasted one healthy year, and they should have drafted Justin Herbert when they had him, but they decided to go with Tua anyways. Once upon a time, there was a tank for Tua, but you got him anyways. You know what you ended up getting with Tua? I'll tell you what. You got Humpty Dumpty had a big fall. I mean, I tell you. And Tua's had a lot of Humpty Dumpties have a big fall.
I was shocked this spring that, one, that Tua lasted all last season without getting injured. But as you said, the chances of that happening 2 years in a row are slim. I thought for sure they were going to go out and sign Joe Flacco, which would have been a perfect move for them because Flacco can still wing it at his age, and he did it again on Sunday. It's a no-brainer. I mean, you bring in a guy like him, he's more than happy to collect a paycheck and be the backup. And then when you need him, break glass, roll Joe out there, and he'll produce.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, Bo. Now Tua says he's going to come back by the end of the year. You know what? what I would do if I were Tua. If this team is so bad, stay out and collect your money because you're going to be useless and you're going to get yourself hurt. So I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid with Tua thinking he can help this team at
Who
the
could
end
get
of the
hurt
year.
rolling out of the bed?
Well, exactly. That's my point. You just made my point for me. So, all right, we're going to bring Candy in here for a station break. We got one more NFL topic before Bo has to get rolling, and then we'll talk a little bit of college football. All right, Candy, go ahead.
The South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book last year in November called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Mad Mouth Morganroth. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google, Kindle, Apple Books. There is also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. There's a link to this book. Scott writes there. I take pictures. There's also a link to our merchandise store. Go get some of our merchandise. You need a South Florida Tribune sweatshirt for the cold days ahead. You can find our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio. Monday nights we talk baseball. Tuesday nights we talk football. Wednesday and Thursday nights you just never know what we're going to talk about, except we also on Fire Up Florida on Thursday nights, we talk hockey. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott, 954-304-4941. Back to you, Scott.
Thank you, Candy. Well done. All right, one more NFL topic we want to get to. The Lions lost Aiden Hutchinson to a leg injury that's likely to keep him out. I've heard reports as early as 4 months and as high as 8 months. And Detroit's 47-9 win at the Dallas Cowboys. It has Jerry Jones saying that he was sick after watching that game. Of course, it's on his 82nd birthday, number one, and it's one of the worst. I think it's probably the second worst defeat ever that the Cowboys have had at home, second or third, but it was bad. So I'm going to ask you right now, Steve, what should Detroit's next move be?
I mean, they're in a great position again this year. I would see if they can swing a trade for a guy that's maybe on the last year of his contract, right. See if they can beef up, their defense there. And Hutchinson is one of those players that, I mean, he's a game wrecker. We've seen that. So, but I would scour, other teams and see if you can bring in a guy. I think you need somebody, down the stretch, especially when the playoffs come around, because you can't bank on him being back for that. And, while the iron is hot, you have to hit it. I mean, let's face it, they're in a prime position right now to make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, well, let's not kid yourself. Brad Holmes, in my opinion, is one of the best general managers in all of football. All right, Paul, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You throw that, do a little fishing and see if Aaron Donald wants to come back for a ring chase or something. But no, I mean, realistically, you kind of have to see what you have, right? I mean, I don't know. It's not like you're going to go find anybody that's Aiden Hutchinson, right? Like anybody that you go find is probably not going to be that guy anyway. So you may have something the caliber of what you can go find on your team already. So, I mean, you probably have to feel that out. They're going to get to find out right away, though, because next week they got the Vikings. So that's going to be a fantastic game.
If they dare think of going after Max Crosby, you got to hope that the Raiders' price comes down a bit because they're going to command a king's ransom for them. What are your thoughts, Coach?
I don't see them doing anything like that. I think you don't replace a player like that. You replace the spot on the roster, but you don't. You can't duplicate that production. So, I don't know what all they have. Maybe it's somebody on the practice squad. Maybe there is somebody out on the street that they like, but you're going to see them probably mixing and matching a little bit more. Maybe there's a one trick edgy guy out there or something that because defensively, I mean, they're playing solidly, but they're not like, they're not an elite defense. Let's not get it, they're playing good defense, but it's more bend, don't break. I think they're 13th overall in total defense. They've been really good against the run, and they've done a decent job of getting off the field on third down. So, you have to, they'll more than likely get into a by committee type of deal, where you'll see them maybe rotating guys a little bit more, to try to make up with that, or try to get guys in the game when they, to feature, their strengths if they can anticipate what's coming.
Right. Just our crack statistical artist out there says $34 million in cap space for the Detroit Lions. I don't know whether they're going to spend a lot of that now. I know that Brad Holmes has already said, I'm not going to go ahead mortgage the future for replacing this spot, but you never know what he'll come up with. All right, turn over to you, Mel.
Yeah, they signed their defensive tackle to an extension, 4 years, $97 million, McNeil. My nephew and I were talking about this. He heard something about you kind of stole my thunder there with Max Crosby. That'd be very interesting if you're able to get a guy like him. And then when Aiden is healthy, you have those two guys there. That's a problem because the way the lines are built, they're built to get a lead early, play with the lead. And when you have a lead early, a double-digit lead early, typically teams are going to start to pass more. So you got to be able to get after the quarterback. That's the way they're built. That's their complementary football. Let's get out to a lead early. And then we're going to go ahead and then we're going to pin our ears back and we're going to go after the quarterback. So they do, they're going to have to look at, somebody may step up. No, you don't replace him with one person because, it's more than just what his contributions are on the football field, his contributions on practice, in that locker room, his leadership, all those things are going to be dearly missed. But it's going to take a couple different guys to make up for that production because, he leads the league in sacks. He was leading the leagues in pressures. Knockdowns. So, this guy here, his motor, when he steps on that field, he's 1,000 miles an hour for 60 minutes. And that's impossible to replace. So, Hassan Reddick is out there. I know he's got new agents now. Looking to get back in with the Jets. You got to get somebody. You just can't you cannot go to Publix and get the bag boy. You got to get somebody because they're in a position right now where they got to win right now because Ben Johnson's not going to hang around forever. Okay, he's not going to be there forever. So while this window is open, you got to seize the opportunity. You got to go get somebody so that you can continue this momentum and go ahead and get this Super Bowl out the way before Ben Johnson leaves.
One thing, well, I can promise you one thing. I will never, ever steal your thunder when it comes to that Publix analogy. That one is all by yourself. So I may come up with a fact or two, but I couldn't come up with that Publix analogy if I wanted to. So
well, Mel, I'm going to be honest. Tomorrow I do my Patriot podcast, and I'm stealing it.
That's all right. Go ahead. It's not.
I'm going to give you credit. I'll say I got it from you.
There you go.
I love that. That
is fantastic, Mel. And that shows you how far Mel Farr has come since he's been in the
pun intended, right, Scott?
Oh, very much so, brother. You know it, and everybody that knows it. So, all right. So, quick takeaways here from the Lions and the Cowboys. Bo, we'll lead off with you, and then after that, you can go ahead and let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
With the Lions, they did exactly what they're supposed to do, right? They got to go and beat the team that's in front of them. With the Cowboys, that team is in trouble. That defense is a mess, and their coach is in a race with Peterson to see who gets fired first at this point. I didn't think McCarthy would get fired early in the year until this last weekend. Because you put up that kind of performance on Jerry's birthday, the worst home defeat since he bought the team. And if there was ever a case for getting canned, that was kind of it. And the only reason I think Peterson could still somehow get fired before him is he went on national TV and was like, it's a culture problem. Well, who starts your culture? The coach. It's almost like he was asking to get canned. So, they got a race going for who's fired first. But that was the main takeaway. It had really little to do with the Lions, having a statement game or anything like that. I think it was more of just how far this Cowboys team has fallen, I think, is the biggest takeaway from that.
All right, my biggest takeaway, and I'll make it really quick, okay? And I can't do things quick every now and then. Dak Prescott isn't worth $60 million. Seriously? Really? You're paying this guy here probably one or two playoff games, $60 million. And what do you think happens, okay? There used to be a game out there, maybe there is, called Candy Crush. Well, this time the Lions crushed the Cowboys in Jerry's house. So, in my opinion, Dak Prescott, you paid him $60 million. Really? Can't believe it. 60. And then you got nobody around him. That's that. All right, Bo, let everybody know they can get a hold of you.
You can find me on all the socials at Football Talk with Bo, and of course, right there on YouTube on the screen at Football-Talk. You can find me here on Tuesdays with Coach on Wednesdays, Roku TV 5 days a week.
Okay, Bo, we'll see you next Tuesday night and have a good show afterwards. But we appreciate you being on the program. Thank you, Bo.
Yes, sir. Take it easy, guys.
See you later, Bo.
So now there are 4. All right, Steve Ballesteri, what's your takeaway from the Lions beating over the Cowboys?
I'm not going to say I loved it, but I kind of liked it a lot. I mean, I had the feeling that Detroit was going to roll over them anyway, because the Cowboys are a mess right now. And, so I wasn't going to say, I think Dallas is going to win. I thought Detroit had that one. And then they get up early and they just, they just put the hammer down. And that flea flicker, that was a thing of beauty. I mean, I was watching that, and when it went, the ball went back to Goff, I knew somebody was going to be open down the field, and that was a nice pass to Laporta. And I think right then it opened the floodgates, because I think at that point Dallas was cooked, and it just kept getting worse for them. I didn't watch the entire game because I was watching another one, but I was flipping around. And, every time I'd go back, the score was more in favor of the Lions. And, I think it both said it wasn't a statement game. I think it kind of was a little bit, because they were saying, well, here we are. You're not going to come in and beat us when you're all in disarray. And I thought they were very impressive on Sunday.
Well, a couple little interesting facts. Number one, during the pregame show, when they were asking Matthew Stafford, about the running backs, did he ever have 1,000-yard running back? It was Reggie Bush. Okay, and now when you think about the way the running game played into that, David Montgomery, I think, is the first running back in Lions history, even more so than Barry Sanders, to rush for a touchdown in 8 straight games. David Montgomery.
He's a really good running back.
Yeah, he is.
He is really good back, I think.
So what's your takeaway, Coach?
Well, for me, and look, Scott, you're a Detroit guy. Mel's a Detroit guy.
Right.
I would have, I was actually texting with Calvin Johnson about a few weeks ago about how come all weird shit always happens when we play, when we play in Dallas,
Right.
And that was like we exercised the demon. The Lions exercised the demon, because good or bad, playing well, playing not well, Dallas has always had Detroit's recently has had Detroit's number, especially when playing in Dallas, and it's just been all the weird stuff that's happened in that game, those games, So to me, I think it was personal. I would have loved to have been in a sports bar in the Detroit metro area on, for that game, just to see the fans. I'm surprised they didn't have Devil's Night a little bit earlier this year.
And by the way, Smoking Jeremy B actually went out to the Lions watch party over at Ford Field. They drew about 8,500 people. That is fun.
Yeah,
I wonder
that's
how many. What I wonder how many people actually in this audience know what Devil's Night is, except in Detroit.
I know Mel knows.
Yeah,
What's
well,
that?
we're in Detroit.
Devil's Night.
What? Oh yeah. Do I know
Yeah.
about Devil's Night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember it. Oh, you talk about a interesting back-to-back day. Devil's Night. Oh, we messed around with your house. Let's go ahead and get our.
My house was off limits, man. They knew better than that.
Yeah.
I think one time they threw like one little piece of toilet paper on a tree or something like that.
Yeah, I remember those days.
It's slick.
I got-
They knew better than come messing around my house.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, so
But,
now
you know,
what happened?
at the end of the day, it's like it's one game. You know, it's just one game. You know, it's like we said before. You know, we've said before that whether you win by 1 or 50, it doesn't matter. It's, you know, it still counts as one game. But man, I'm glad I'm not a Cowboy fan. Put it that way.
Well, put it this way: the last time the Lions beat the Cowboys was in 2013, and I'll piggyback off of you, Coach. Okay, that every time they went down there, something crazy happened. Whether it's a pass interference call that shouldn't have been called, whatever the case may be, they're cursed down in Big D. But I think Jared Goff, if you understand who gave away the game balls, and if you watch a couple of those videos on social media, you're right. They took this thing personal in a big way. And remember, Dan Campbell played at Texas A&M. He played, I believe, did he play for the Cowboys too, if I remember right?
Well, he was on the staff with Parcells there.
He
is that what it was?
He played there too.
Yeah.
He played there too.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure exactly, but I knew that there was a bit of a connection. So good stuff. All right, Mel, what's your takeaway? Hey, Jay, welcome to the big show. Down with the Yankees? I don't know. I'm not really looking at the score right now, but if Candy Epling wants to get it to me, I'll be more than happy to be.
It's a football show. It's a football show.
Yeah. I was disappointed. Be honest with you. I think Jerry deserved 82 for his 82nd birthday. I was really hoping they would hang half 100. They took their foot off the gas at the end a couple times. The one time they got there in the red zone, getting a little too pass happy instead of just pounding it in there. Then the next time they went there and pounded it in there, I think that made it 43 to whatever. And I'm looking for another touchdown. And then they kicked the field goal. Then at the end, they just had mercy on them, as opposed to kicking the field goal at the end, which would have been a half 100. They went ahead and went for it on 4th and 4 or something like that and didn't get it. No, look, you can't have any mercy. Those guys are getting paychecks just like everybody else, man. On Monday morning, they go to the window and they get a paycheck. Their job, the defense's job, is to stop you. Your job is to score. I was very disappointed. I was hurt. I wanted them to hang half 100 on the Cowboys. I think Jerry deserved that for his birthday. And I was disappointed that we were not able to give him that birthday present.
You know, I wanted to see him put 50 up there too, but I'll say one thing as I close this topic out. The Lions last year went in there with no kicker, okay, but I'm going to tell you something. Jake Bates has been a great pickup for Detroit off the United Football League with the Michigan Panthers right across the field, so more power to him. Jake Bates has been really good. We're going to switch over to college football. I know we've loaded the first part of the program up with pro, but we'll start with Oregon. Number 3 Oregon ended up winning 32-31 over number 2 Ohio State in front of a record crowd, 60,129 fans over in Oregon. But get this, the average watch, okay, was 10.2 million across NBC, the most watched primetime Big Ten game since 2008. Boy, tell me if NBC made out like bandits or what, Steve? 10.2 million across NBC, the most ever watched primetime Big Ten games since. I'll tell you, NBC looks good with some of the matchups they're getting in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that was some huge numbers for them. So, the advertisers were loving that. And I was surprised by that. I thought Ohio State was going to go in there and win. Obviously, I was way off on that one. But no, it's always great. College football is great for that because you never know, Look what happened the week before. Vanderbilt goes in, beats Alabama, So who would have thought that? They hadn't beat them in, I think it was 40 years.
They've never beaten Alabama, I don't think, if I understand.
No,
correctly.
it was like 40 years ago.
It was a long
It was
time.
40 years ago. Yeah.
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 Talk
So-
about stealing somebody's thunder. You just
You
stole
know,
mine.
and then you know me, I'm an Alabama fan going back to, Bear Bryant. But, I felt good for those Vandy players who've just been getting spanked for 40 years. And, good for them. They had their Super Bowl, quote unquote,
All right, but let me ask you a quick question because now I'm going to go to that topic next. Okay, so were you impressed with Oregon winning over Ohio State and
Oh,
the
yeah.
amount of people that watched it?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
cool. Yeah, that was unbelievable. All right, Coach, what do you think?
Obviously, a huge game this time of year. Huge win for the Ducks. Man, I didn't get it. I was watching another game, can't remember which one, but then just knowing how this one ended, I wish I would have watched it. But yeah, those are great numbers. That's what the bottom line is. With all of these mergers and realignment, they're bringing, that will only drive revenue up, for the league. They get those kind of audiences and with the matchups that they're getting, it's good business for the Big Ten.
Okay, Mel.
Yeah, that's what they wanted, right? That's why they did all that for the money. So
More the money.
I didn't watch that game. I was watching another Big Ten game. It's funny saying that. I was watching UCLA and Minnesota, the real Big Ten game, to see what my Bruins are going to do. I did watch it for a few minutes. Man, it was late, man. That's real late for me too. I didn't see the end of the game. I saw in the morning who ended up winning. I was glad. Don't like either Oregon or Ohio State. Obviously, being from Michigan, don't care for Ohio State. Don't care for Oregon. Obviously, from being in the former Pac-12, and obviously with Chip Kelly being there, that's just adds another level to my disdain for Ohio State. So glad to see that they lost. That they got that L. Dan Lanning had a very interesting play that he did where he intentionally had a 12th man on the field to take some time off the clock and keep them from getting a first down. I think it was. I can't remember the exact reason for doing it, but it was a very interesting strategy in which he had.
They basically traded a 5-yard penalty for the time coming off the clock.
There you go.
And we're able to, put 4 over 3,
right, because they had 12 men out there.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
it's
you're going to have to find the answer to that.
There's no rule against it, just like
right.
Ole Miss with their guys feigning injury, right? There's
right.
no rules against it right now.
Right.
So coaches are going to find a way to they're going to find a way to always stretch those rules. But yeah, at some point in time they're going to have to deal with that. But within the rules, he didn't do anything.
To me, I don't want to get on the off topic, but they really, once they see that and the snap is intimate, they should blow the play dead. You know what I mean? Don't let if there was a running clock, put 2 or 3 seconds back on the clock. But because they know that's why you see that flag come out immediately as soon as the ball.
Right, but it's it's eventually a free play, right? So I mean, if he does chuck it down there and something bad happens, they get the ball back.
Right, exactly.
Okay. All right, I want to get to one last topic while Steve's on. I know he has to get rolling real soon. Okay, Steve, your observations about the Army Navy, how they actually improved to 10-0 with a combined record for the first time since 1945. Bear in mind, over the weekend, Army steamrolled UAB 44-10 to improve to 6-0. Trent Dilfer was the head coach of the UAB, 1-5. I know you're a big military guy, Steve. So give me your thoughts about the Army Navy.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like 1945, Doc Blanchard for the Army, right? So I love it. I mean, the service academies, they're not football powers. We know that. But, those kids go out there and they give it their all. And I love to see both of those teams undefeated because if they can both keep rolling, it will make the Army-Navy game this year even more, intriguing, which it always is anyway. And you know me, I was an Army officer, so I have to go with the black and gold.
Okay, I'll have you comment on one other topic, then let everybody know how they get a hold of you, and then Mel and I and Coach will close it out.
Okay.
Well, what are your thoughts about the fact that, did you know that the get-in price for number 23 out Indiana at Northwestern a couple of weeks ago was $134 at the Wildcat Temporary Stadium? The get-in price of previously number 1 Alabama at Vanderbilt and Nashville was $129. Vanderbilt obviously 140 to 35. And you believe that Northwestern actually outpriced Vanderbilt, of course, their stadium and everything?
No, I find that really difficult to believe, but as you know, we said earlier, it's always something happening in college football. I would have never thought that. I mean, I would have thought, like that's pretty exorbitant.
Well, that's why I come up with these topics so people can learn some things, even like you, Steve. So now we have Army and Navy because you made it on the program. And because everybody wanted to talk about that anyways, I had to stick that stat in because we fall into the GMTA. Great minds think alike. All right, with that said, Steve, I know you got to roll, but you're not rolling without giving your contact information. Let everybody know when you get a hold of you.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. You can find me on PatsFans.com where I write for them. I just did my Patriots report card for their loss to the Houston Texans, and it wasn't pretty, as you can imagine. But I thought Drake May did pretty good for a debut, first start in the NFL, threw 3 touchdowns. And I'm on Facebook, all the other social medias, Steve Balestrieri. And thanks for having me, as always. Love talking football with you guys.
Well, we enjoy having you, Steve. Obviously, you're a good friend of mine. Let everybody know out there when I write my next book that Steve is going to be writing the forward to it. I'll probably have 1 or 2 people write forwards, but Steve has definitely been one of the guys who's more than happy to do it. So, Steve, glad to have you on here. I was actually glad that I had a chance to get an Army-Navy topic with your military background on it. It worked out real well. So, thanks for being on, Steve. We'll talk soon and look forward to having you come on again. Thanks,
all right,
buddy.
guys.
God
Great
bless.
talking with you. Have a great night.
You do the same,
All right,
Steve.
see you later, buddy.
All right, so now that brings the 3 of us on. Candy, I'm like, why don't you come on? Oh, all right, we got this. The topics right now. All right, so with that said, Mel, let's go back to the Army-Navy success. 10-0, and of course now Army 6-0. Mel, give me your thoughts about what they're seeing with the cadets.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really looked at their schedule. I mean, I have to take a deeper dive into their schedule, who they played, who they beat, and obviously, I think they hide the weenie over there too. They run that that triple option, which is extremely difficult to defend.
Right.
And when you're playing teams that don't see that often, as we saw with Alabama, that's you have somebody that can really hide that weenie. It's very, very difficult to defend, and that's how they're able to be relevant. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, they have to play. They have to hold up physically on the defensive side of the ball. But when you're able to shorten the game like they're able to do, when you're running the football the way that they do, and you're just grinding it out, and you're shortening that game, it makes it very, very tough because possessions are at a premium. Then you, as an opponent, really have to try and capitalize each time that you have the football because you know that it's going to be another 10, 15 minutes before you get the ball back. You're sitting over there. And I'm talking about real time, not clock time, not just real time. It's going to be a minute before you get the ball back. And so you have to capitalize on those opportunities. Otherwise, the next thing you know, the whole game's gone by and they've had all this time possession. They had 45 minutes of time possession. You've only had 15 minutes. They've gotten off 60 plays. You've gotten off 20 or something like that, or 25. It makes it very, very difficult. So it doesn't surprise me, but again, I have to dive deeper into it and look and see who they play because I really haven't looked into it. I didn't get a chance to look to see who they've played thus far.
Well, let me tell you this real quick before I turn over to Coach. Number one, I had an opportunity to see Army take on FAU for at least a half, and they looked pretty good with what I saw. So, and I actually made a good Army contact that maybe if I get a chance, I'll try to get him to come on this show with you guys. How's that sound? I'll try to work a little bit of magic. Well, he's actually a media guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll I'll see if I can get it worked out where he's not only going to come on this show, but the Motor City Madmouth show. So those are things I'm working on, Coach. And when I do, I got to make sure my brothers are included in what's up my bag of tricks. And you know what, Coach? You know my bag of tricks is like cannon. It goes far and wide. Give me your thoughts on Army.
Well, you know I love Academy football. I mean, I coached at Army for 7 years and earlier in my career, and those were very formative years and a time in my life I wouldn't trade for anything. I had a tremendous experience and still have great relationships with a lot of not just coaches but former players from that time as well. So to see them having success is it does my heart joy. When college football is more fun when the academies are competitive. Both teams 5-0 again, and I think Army currently holds the longest winning streak in the country at this time. And Mel, I pulled up their schedule. So, they opened. They played Lehigh, right? Then FAU, Rice, Temple, Tulsa, and then UAB. So it hasn't exactly been a murderer's row. Left on the schedule, they got East Carolina, Air Force, which will, academy games, you can throw the odds out the window. You never know what's going to happen. North Texas. Then they play at Notre Dame, which will be interesting, especially if they're still unbeaten. And then they finish up with UTSA before they play Navy.
What are they in? Conference USA? What are they in?
No, actually, they're in the American Athletic Conference.
Yeah. Well, one of them is getting ready to go somewhere, right? Air Force is going somewhere?
Nah, that hasn't been finalized yet.
Yeah,
but let me tell you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Coach. Let me tell you that North Texas is a really good team. I saw them play over the weekend against FAU. I mean, FAU had them on the rope, but North Texas is a pretty good.
Yeah,
those are Group of 5 schools, so it's a difference. It's a difference.
Yeah, it is. But you know what? Don't sell North Texas short. And when they play each other later in the year, anything can happen.
One game, anything can happen. They go up against a school like Notre Dame. Anything can happen in one game.
Well, that's a wild card game that I'm interested in looking at. And you know what? What we may do if Army continues to remain either with one loss or no losses, we might actually bring that up as one of the games of the week on a future show. How does that sound? Because you got me really intrigued, Mel, about that one. Notre Dame against Army. I mean, my goodness, that to me you talk about
it will be they're playing in Yankee Stadium.
Oh, what is it going to be played at
Yankee Stadium? Yeah, because just in the old days, in the 40s, that's where they would play the Army Navy or Army Navy. Well, they'd played Notre Dame in the old Yankee Stadium before, like back in the day.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, remind me, guys, to go ahead and revisit this thing in about a few weeks from now, because I'll tell you that's when there's going to be a lot of rivalry games. And one of our future shows, Coach, is going to be on the new onside kick rule. I haven't gotten a chance to do it because when you get deep into the year, you run into so many of these storylines. But I will slide it in because I'm dying. I'm really looking forward. I don't want to say dying anymore, but I'm looking forward to getting your opinion on the new onside kick. But obviously, it didn't take priority the last couple of weeks. All right, so finally, I'll let you both comment on those two prices. You talk about the Northwestern Indiana game going for $1.34, and then of course the Alabama at $1.29. Mel, some thoughts about the two games and what they cost and whether they were worth the money.
You said the Northwestern game and the
the Northwestern Indiana game during a temporary stadium. They charge $134 to go there, and the game and the get-in price for the Alabama Vanderbilt was $129. So a $5 difference.
Yeah, I think typically, I think they're saying their tickets were like $17 at Northwestern or something like that. They got a temporary stadium. It only holds about 7,000 people, but it's got a great view right there on the lake. I think they did something on campus. They're thinking about going elsewhere, maybe even playing at Soldier Field and different things of that nature. But they said, well, hey, why can't we? I think they decided to do something on campus. They built some kind of temporary.
If my memory serves me correctly, I could be wrong. Maybe Candy could look it up. I believe that temporary facility is $15,000. I don't know for sure, but
I think it's 7. I think
I don't know.
I think it's real small, and that's why the ticket. That's why it's a hard ticket. It's right there because one side's the lake, so I mean, there's no stands over there on that side.
But the only thing you could do would be the end zones on one side of the field. But
yeah, I think they got stands on the back side of the one end zone and maybe on the side, but it's not that many folks in there. Because I was like, well, I mean, what are they doing here? Because we've been talking about having UCLA have a on-campus stadium. We've been talking about this for years. As a matter of fact, my brother was in Detroit, and they're talking to Troy, and they're talking about, man, we need to get a stadium on campus because the Rose Bowl is like 45 minutes away. It's hard to get in. It's only like 1 or 2 ways in, one or 2 ways out, and it's hard to get in there. It's down in a hole. It's hot down there. It's in the valley, but that's something else. But that's interesting though, because Northwestern is not doing very well this year, but it is a ticket that is extremely hard to get.
All right. Well, you know what? Candy clarified the number, Mel, for all three of us. It's 12,000 seats. So it isn't 15, it isn't 7, it's 12. So there you go. But nevertheless, they're charging $134, and you're right. They're going to be playing in bigger venues as the opponent gets bigger. Good thought. So compare and contrast when you think about the two. You got the temporary building versus Alabama getting upset by Vanderbilt for the first time in 9 zillion years. So
that's embarrassing.
I don't think when they set the ticket prices for that Vandy game, I don't think they, were
planning on losing.
Counting on that, they weren't planning to lose. But I mean, I don't think anybody really.
That was in Nashville though. They played in Nashville.
Yeah, that's what. So I mean, I don't know. It's still cheaper than an NFL ticket, for most places.
That's a great. I've actually driven by that stadium when I was visiting my sister-in-law. I've never been in it. I drove by it. It's in downtown Nashville. I was visiting my sister-in-law out in Franklin, Tennessee, I believe it is, but which is almost just a suburb of it anyway. But pretty interesting.
And they had a good crowd, but it wasn't. I mean, from what I remember seeing the game, I didn't think it was like sold out. Like it wasn't standing room only.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of guys, like, man, we're not gonna watch these guys get boat raced.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
End up being one of the games of the century, obviously.
Yeah.
Or Vanderbilt.
Boy,
it showed up and stayed, man. They got their money's worth at Vandy. I don't know about the Northwestern fans so much, but
yeah, well, I will mention one thing about that game though, and I think we talked about it last week, didn't we? About what they were charging for memorabilia prices for certain parts. It's unbelievable. But I'm happy for Vanderbilt. They ended up going ahead and winning that game. They hadn't done it.
They've been playing tough. I like that quarterback. I forget who they opened with at the beginning of it. They had an impressive win in week 1. And I was at that time I remember thinking to myself, I like this quarterback. I mean, he's got some moxie and he can, he's a competitive guy.
Yeah, it's interesting though. Well, Northwestern is a temporary facility, but I know their new one, for what people tell me, is going to be absolutely gorgeous. And obviously, what else can I say? I mean, this Alabama Vanderbilt has always intrigued me. That's for sure. So, I want to thank everybody for joining us on Inside the Pigskin. And Coach, stand up for a minute. I want everybody to see the shirt you're wearing. Go ahead, get up. Iowa State Cyclone football. Yeah, that's one of your stops, isn't it, Coach?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Oh, there you have an opportunity to promote it.
Cyclones are playing good ball right now. I'm proud of them.
Yeah, well, one of your stops isn't Florida State, but like I told you, since you've made your name on this network here for not liking them, I figured I'd go ahead and wear it just one night only, and next week I will come back with the Miami Hurricanes, because that's really where my mind and heart is. But anytime you can have fun with your pals on there, you might as well go out there and do it. And that's pretty much what we got. But yeah, Iowa State has built a program. Coach Bono was a part of that program as well. So, I'm always intrigued when you talk about numbers and prices. The 134 for the Wildcats at a 12,000 seat stadium, and 129. I don't even know what Vanderbilt's seat is, but a whole lot bigger than 12,000 for sure. So, we had a great show tonight. It was great to have Steve Ballesteri on, Bo, as always. So obviously Mel gave his picks. I'm going to defer on any of those picks as well. But meanwhile, with that said, Mel, I'm going to turn over to Candy Eveling to take us home.
The South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book last November called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Mad Mouth Morganroth. It talks about his 40 plus years in the media and how the media has changed over that 40 plus years. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple, and Google Books. There is also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there is also a link to our merchandise store. You need a baseball cap or a sweatshirt that says South Florida Tribune on it, go to our website and click the link and go shopping galore. If you'd like to listen to podcasts, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Google, iHeartRadio. Monday nights we talk baseball. Tuesday nights we talk football. Wednesday and Thursday nights you just never know what we're going to be talking about. Except we did add a hockey show on Thursday nights called Fire Up Florida. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, you can call Scott 954-304-4941. Twitter is at Tribune South. Mel, how can we get a hold of you?
You can find me on all the social media at Melfar Jr., Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn at Melfar Jr., and then you can follow what we have going on for the youth here in Georgia and also in Michigan at melfarsuperstarfoundation.org.
Awesome. Thank you. And Coach, how can people find you?
You can find me here on Tuesday nights. I'm also with Bo at 4:00 Eastern on his channel and Coach's Corner. And then social media wise, you got to find me on LinkedIn. That's the only platform that I'm on currently.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I met you there. By the way, Jay, just so you know, Florida State we know is a poor team, but there's an inside joke here. When Coach, what I would encourage you to do, Jay, is look on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, and Coach let people know exactly what he thought of Florida State, and it didn't look like he was on the verge of sending them any Christmas cards at all. So, you'll understand exactly what this shirt means, but you might have to let your mouse do a little bit of searching here to see Coach talk about Florida State. And this is an inside company joke for us. So that's all I can say, Jay, pertaining to this until you go out there and watch it. But, the one thing that we all do, especially the three of us and the rest of the crew, we all have a lot of fun on this show. These guys are like my brothers, man. They really are. And that's when you're on a show with your brothers, you can do an awful lot of things on here and just simply have fun. So people can't go out there and have fun with us. Well, I'm sorry, but we're going to do it anyway. So, but yeah, you might want to check it out, Jay. That'll give you more information. But he says, I'm in Georgia, but he can't find me. Oh, well, okay. Well, Mel, you got a neighbor in Georgia. But
I see. I
so,
see.
Great stuff by the chat room tonight. Really delighted with what we saw tonight. More importantly, I want to thank Steve Ballesteri for being on and Bo as well. And, of course, my two tag team partners, Melfar Jr. and Coach Bono. We do this every Tuesday night. So on behalf of Melfar Jr. and Coach Bono, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside the Pigskin. We will catch you next week, and good to see you again, Fernando. Maybe one of these days we can get you on one of these shows, but great to see you. We'll be back next Tuesday night. New topics, more updates, and good hay for a lot of you guys to go out there and nibble on. I guess they call that the horse's business stuff, right? I don't know. But anyways, I'm horsing around. Yeah, who cares? Doesn't really matter. We're having fun. That's all that matters. We're done. See you next Tuesday.